Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Today's episode is a deeply personal and powerful one, Healing Through Language. How English helped me express my emotions. This isn't just about learning grammar or pronunciation. It's about how learning English can actually help you connect more deeply with your own feelings and heal emotional wounds you didn't even know how to describe before.
Yes, and this is a topic that resonates with so many people, especially those who grew up in environments where expressing emotion wasn't easy, or maybe even discouraged. Sometimes, in our native language, we carry cultural expectations, fear of judgment, or even trauma that makes it hard to speak honestly about how we feel. And then suddenly, English becomes more than just a language. It becomes a tool for self-expression, for processing pain, and for building emotional clarity.
Exactly. For some learners, English feels like a fresh page. They say things like, I can say I'm sad in English, but I can't say it in my native language without breaking down. And that says a lot, doesn't it? That this second language becomes a safer space. It creates emotional distance, but also emotional access. You start saying things in English that you never had the words for before, like I feel overwhelmed, or I need time to heal.
I remember one listener wrote to us and said learning English gave them a vocabulary for pain and hope. That stayed with me. Because when we don't have the language to describe what we're going through, it can make us feel alone, confused, or numb. But once you start learning words like frustrated, anxious, relieved, or grateful, something opens up. You start recognizing what's going on inside you. You realize, oh, this feeling has a name. I'm not crazy. I'm just human.
And it's not just the vocabulary either. It's the way English allows for reflection. Journaling in English. Talking to yourself in English. Writing letters you'll never send. Practicing conversations you wish you could have had. Sometimes it's easier to say, I forgive you, or I miss you in a language that doesn't carry all that emotional baggage. It gives you room to breathe.
That's true. And for many, writing or speaking in English becomes a therapy session. They start asking themselves new questions. What am I really feeling today? Why did that conversation hurt me so much? And that process of self-inquiry becomes healing. Language helps untangle the emotions. It helps you step back, observe, and eventually understand yourself more deeply.
It's kind of like emotional translation, isn't it? You're not just translating words from one language to another, you're translating yourself. You're slowly finding ways to tell your story. And when you finally say something like, I don't have to be strong all the time, even if it's just to yourself, something softens. Something starts to heal.
And there's no right or wrong way to do it. Some people write poems. Some write diary entries. Some just think in English while walking. Others record voice notes to themselves. However you do it, the important thing is that you're opening a door to healing, to clarity, to peace. Learning English might have started as an academic goal, but it can grow into an emotional journey, too.
Absolutely, Nick. And something beautiful happens when you allow yourself to be imperfect in the process. Because expressing emotions, especially in a second language, is messy. You might not find the perfect words. You might struggle to explain something deeply personal. But the act of trying already brings so much relief. It's not about perfect grammar or flawless pronunciation. It's about giving yourself permission to feel, in whatever language gives you the most space to breathe.
Yes. And I think that's also where growth happens, not just linguistically, but emotionally. You begin to notice how your emotional vocabulary expands as your English improves. At first, it's just happy, sad, angry. But later, it becomes disappointed, overwhelmed, hopeful, betrayed, proud. You're no longer trapped in a narrow emotional box. And with every new word, you become more fluent, not just in English, but in understanding yourself.
That's why we always say, language learning is not just about speaking to others, it's about speaking to yourself. And sometimes, English gives people a way to rewrite their story. Maybe someone felt silenced growing up. Maybe they were never taught how to name their emotions. But now, through English journaling, or speaking, or even just thinking in English, they're finding a voice they didn't know they had.
There's something so powerful about that. And it can be as small as writing, "I had a tough day, but I'm still trying." That sentence might seem simple, but if you were never able to say that in your native language, it becomes monumental. It becomes proof that you're learning to be kind to yourself, in a new language, and in a new way.
And let's not forget how this connects with mental health, too. When people express themselves regularly in English, they often say they feel less anxious, more grounded, more in control. Like they can process emotions instead of just reacting to them. It's like emotional journaling with a learning bonus. You're building both language skill and emotional resilience at the same time.
Yes, and even if it starts off feeling a bit artificial, like you copying phrases from a textbook, over time, it becomes natural. Because you're not just copying anymore. You're choosing. You're reflecting. You're owning your thoughts. And that's a sign of true growth, both as a learner and as a person.
I think one of the most beautiful things is when learners stop saying, "I'm not fluent yet," and start saying, "I'm learning to express myself better every day." Because that shift, from chasing perfection to embracing progress, is where healing happens. That's where confidence grows. That's where English becomes more than a skill, it becomes part of who you are.
And that shift doesn't happen overnight. It happens in quiet, personal moments, when you're sitting alone with your notebook, or replaying a conversation in your head, or reading a sentence that finally feels like it says what you've been feeling all along. It's not dramatic. It's not always visible to others. But it's real. That's the kind of transformation that doesn't just improve your English, it deepens your relationship with yourself.
Exactly. And you know what's interesting? A lot of people feel safer expressing certain feelings in English than in their native language. Maybe because it creates a little emotional distance, like putting your emotions into a different container. That distance can actually help people feel more in control. It becomes easier to say, "I feel lonely," or "I'm proud of myself," or even "I don't know what I'm feeling yet." And just saying those words can bring relief.
That's such a good point. English can act like a filter, softening things that might feel too sharp in your own language. Or giving you new emotional clarity because you're thinking more slowly and deliberately. And that's actually something I've heard from a lot of learners. They say, "I understand my feelings better in English." It's incredible how language can reshape our inner world.
Yes, and it's why we always encourage people to write, talk, or even think in English about their real lives, not just textbook exercises. Because when you say, "I'm learning English," what you're also doing is learning to live in English. And life is emotional. It's messy. It's complicated. The more you bring your real experiences into your learning, the more meaningful and powerful your progress becomes.
And that's what helps it last. Because you're not memorizing words, you're creating connections. Between English and your daily life. Between your feelings and your words. Between who you are now and who you're becoming. When you do that, English is no longer something outside of you that you're trying to reach, it becomes something inside of you that's helping you grow.
And that inner growth shows up in the most subtle ways. Like the first time you catch yourself thinking in English without even trying. Or when you journal about a bad day and realize you feel calmer afterward, not because the day changed, but because you could finally name what was happening. That ability to label your emotions, to make sense of your inner world, is such a powerful step toward emotional regulation. And doing it in English. That's a whole new level of resilience.
Yeah, it's kind of like building an emotional toolkit. Every new word or phrase gives you more tools to explain what you're going through. So instead of just saying, "I'm sad," you might learn to say, I feel overwhelmed, or I'm exhausted but proud. And those small differences matter. They help you be kinder to yourself. More honest. More specific. Which also means you're more likely to figure out what you need, whether that's rest, encouragement, or just a moment to breathe.
And journaling in English, especially, can become a safe place for that kind of reflection. It's not about being perfect, or writing grammatically correct sentences. It's about expressing something that needed to be heard. Even if no one else reads it. Even if it's just one word on a page. The act of writing it down can shift something inside you.
I love that. And the truth is, language and healing are deeply connected. There's research behind it, too. People who write about their emotions, even in a second language, tend to experience reduced stress and better emotional clarity. So, when you sit down and write, "Today I felt stuck," or "I was proud of myself for speaking up," you're not just practicing English, you're processing your life. You're healing, in real time, one sentence at a time.
That's the beauty of it. You don't have to separate your emotional journey from your English journey. They can support each other. They can even heal each other. So the next time you feel stuck, or sad, or confused, try picking up your pen, opening a notes app, or talking into a voice recorder. Use English to say what's on your heart. It might feel awkward at first, but over time, it gets easier. And more honest. And more freeing.
And you know what else happens over time? You start to notice patterns, not just in the way you use English, but in how you feel. Maybe you realize that certain days of the week are harder than others, or that you're more confident writing in the morning than speaking in the afternoon. Maybe you even discover that you write more positively after a walk or after listening to music. These aren't just language notes, they are emotional insights, too. And they help you understand both your learning habits and your mental well-being.
Exactly. And that awareness can change the way you approach everything, not just English. Because once you understand that your emotions are valid, that they can be seen and expressed in any language, you start to let go of that pressure to always perform perfectly. You realize that learning isn't linear. Healing isn't linear. And that's okay. You can show up exactly as you are and still be making progress.
Yes, and journaling makes that visible. You might look back at your entries from a month ago and notice how far you've come. Maybe back then you were writing short, hesitant sentences. But now you're writing longer reflections. Or maybe your vocabulary has grown. Or maybe you're just more honest with yourself. That's growth. That's success. Even if it doesn't come with a certificate or test score.
And even if some entries are messy or emotional or feel incomplete, that's part of the process. You don't have to filter yourself when you're journaling. You don't have to translate everything perfectly. You just have to show up. Write what you feel. Say what's real. That in itself is a powerful act of self-care and self-trust.
So true. And the best part is, your journal doesn't judge you. It doesn't correct your grammar or tell you that you're too slow. It just listens. Patiently. Quietly. And sometimes, that's all we need, a space where we can be seen and heard, even if it's just by ourselves. In English, in progress, and in peace.
And when we talk about journaling in English, we're not just talking about writing your daily routine, or what you ate for lunch, although that's a perfectly fine place to start. We're also talking about the moments that made you pause, the thoughts that kept you up at night, or the little wins that made you smile. When you take time to reflect like that in a second language, something shifts inside you. You stop learning English just for performance, and start using it to connect with yourself.
Exactly. You stop thinking of English as just a school subject and start seeing it as a tool for your real life. A tool to express your stress, your dreams, your confusion, your gratitude. And the more you use it that way, the less intimidating it feels. Suddenly, English is no longer the scary thing you struggle to master, it becomes the quiet friend that listens, that helps you process life as it happens.
And you don't need fancy grammar or perfect spelling to do that. Just honest thoughts. Just a few minutes a day. It could be on your phone, in a notebook, even on a voice memo if you prefer speaking. What matters most is the consistency, the habit of checking in with yourself, in English. That repetition builds comfort. That comfort builds confidence. And confidence slowly quiets down all those voices in your head saying you're not good enough yet.
It's a small practice, but it carries a big message. I'm learning, I'm growing, and I'm doing it in a way that honors where I am emotionally and mentally. You don't need to be fluent to write your truth. You don't need to be perfect to show up for yourself. Journaling gives you the space to practice both, being honest in English and being kind to yourself.
And the beautiful thing is, as you continue this habit, you start noticing how your emotional fluency grows alongside your language fluency. You begin to name your feelings more clearly. You start identifying patterns in your mood. And because you're doing all of this in English, you're also reinforcing vocabulary, sentence structure, and clarity, without even realizing it.
You're building a bridge between two things that are often kept separate, language learning and emotional healing. But they can walk hand in hand. Because when you feel safe, you learn faster. When you feel heard, even by yourself, your motivation becomes more sustainable. You're no longer chasing progress to escape insecurity. You're learning because you're nurturing who you are.
So, if you've been struggling to stay motivated or feeling overwhelmed by your English journey, maybe it's time to try something gentler, something that speaks to your heart, not just your grammar. English journaling isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. And sometimes, being real is the most powerful thing you can do for both your language skills and your mental health.
That's right. Think of your journal as a safe space where mistakes are welcome, where growth is quiet but steady, and where you get to show up as you are, in progress, in peace. You're not just learning to speak a language. You're learning to understand yourself better through it. And that, honestly, is the kind of fluency that really matters.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We hope this episode inspired you to start, or continue, your journaling journey in English. Remember, even one sentence a day can lead to incredible breakthroughs, both in language and in life.
We'll be back soon with another episode to support you on your English learning path. Until then, be kind to yourself, write freely, and don't forget, you're doing better than you think.
Take care, and keep writing your story, one English word at a time.